Today, we're going to learn about the last of three acts of Congress that were used to develop the American West. The first was the Homestead Act of 1862, the Pacific Railway Act, also of 1862, and today we're going to be learning about the Dawes Act of 1887, which really brought an end to Native American life on the Great Plains, as it existed for centuries before the white man arrived. Let's take a minute and review the Homestead Act. In order to entice settlers to leave the East and move out into the Great Plains, the federal government offered homesteaders 160 acres to establish their farm. And even though the majority of homesteaders were not successful, the federal government achieved its objectives by populating the Great Plains with white people. The federal government also gave its resources, its land, and its money in the form of cheap loans to railroad companies to develop a transcontinental railway system.
And you better remember that the transcontinental railway system completely changed the American West.
Well, farming just became much more profitable because the farmers in the Great Plains could send their cattle, their crops, back east. Farmers are less isolated and they can buy supplies from manufacturers in the East. And this created an economic boom in the Great Plains and in the mountain states that attracted even more settlers and investors. If you look at these two maps, you can really see the impact. The difference between 1850 and 1890, all of those red areas are places where people live. Can you see how many more people live in the Great Plains, the mountain states, and on the West Coast in 1890? And you can also envision how it would have affected Native Americans. So you can think of it like this. The Homestead Act created an incentive for people to move into the Great Plains in the Midwest, and the Pacific Railway Act created the conditions for prosperity in the Great Plains. The Dawes Act will remove Native Americans from their ancestral lands to make room for white settlers. Let's take a look at those ancestral lands. This is somewhere between 200,000 and 250,000 square miles across 6 states. Native Americans are being forced off of their lands and restricted to smaller areas called Indian reservations. And it's no secret that, again, this is because white settlers want their lands. In fact, the entire area in green on this map is considered surplus land that will be sold to white settlers. This next part gets a little complicated, but it's important to follow. The remaining Sioux lands were then divided into smaller plots and distributed to thousands of tribal members. Why would the federal government think this was a good idea? Senator Dawes actually thought he was helping the Indians. The policy was going to help them by making them act more like white people, by turning them into private farmers who were going to get rich. Capitalism would solve all of their problems. He was going to civilize the Indians in order to save them. But it was naive because this isn't the way Native Americans think about land. The love of possessions is a disease with them. They take tithes from the poor to support the rich who rule. They claim this mother of ours, the earth, for their own and fence their neighbors away. If America had been twice the size that it is, there still would not have been enough. Ultimately, Between the Dawes Act and wars against the Native Americans, as well as eliminating their food supply, the population of the United States that is Native American will drop from 5% in 1825 to 0.3% in 1925.